Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on the Body Locks YouTube channel. And joining me today is none other than Jack Hermanson. Jack, how are you?
I'm great, my man. All good here.
All good. So, of course, one of the first questions I have to ask you is, during this COVID-19 pandemic, how have you been holding up? I know my situation in Florida is a lot different than your situation over in Norway. What's things been like over there for you guys?
It was a little bit more restricted in the beginning, or actually, it started to loosen up a couple of weeks ago. But first off, the gym got closed and the training centers and so on. So we basically need to be a little bit creative. Me and my coaches, we've been doing some outdoors training and yeah, done our best to work around it and still prepare for a fight.
Right, absolutely. And of course, UFC fighters, MMA fighters were affected by the pandemic, just like everyone in a litany of other jobs. Your opportunity to compete was for a short amount of time taken away because doing these kinds of things amid the pandemic and amid the restrictions was not possible. You actually had a fight of yours canceled. You were supposed to fight Chris Weidman, a former champion, on a May 2nd event, I believe in Oklahoma City. That event was then canceled due to the coronavirus. What was that like? What were the emotions like knowing that the fight that you had been training for, the fight that you had been preparing for, was now going to be canceled due to something that is so far out of your control?
Well, as soon as the situation escalated and all the restrictions were coming about, I was just open-minded and knew that there was a big chance that this is not going to happen. So I just tried to stay positive and train and so on. And then the call came that the fight is not going to happen, and I wasn't shocked at all, to be honest. Of course, a little bit sad, but at the same time, I knew that there were a lot of people out there that had a worse situation than I do. So I wasn't affected too bad, and fortunately, the UFC could turn things around and come with the Fight Island offers to help us out as well. So I'm happy with that.
Right. And you mentioned Fight Island. We definitely need to discuss that. As a foreign fighter, and I know you might not consider yourself foreign, but as someone who is overseas, not in the US right now, you were unable in many ways to come to the United States and to compete. So for you, Fight Island is the only way currently under the UFC's current plan to compete. What is Fight Island and the fact that the UFC would go to that measure to get and secure Yas Island in Abu Dhabi? What does that mean to you as a fighter to be able to compete?
I think it's really, really cool that they are trying to do everything they can to keep all their fighters active. And I'm super happy that I got a shot and the co-main event. So yeah, it means a lot. And I hasn't been fighting since September. So it's really about time that I get a fight. So fortunately, they are doing this because if they didn't, I might as well have been a year without a fight.
Right. And when this was announced, when Fight Island was announced on ESPN from UFC President Dana White, a lot of people started thinking that we were going to see a Caribbean island. They were expecting the fighters to be getting drinks in between rounds out of a coconut. This is not exactly what a lot of people thought, that it's Yas Island, a place that the UFC has already held events at. Were you surprised to learn that this was Yas Island? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was really surprised. But at the same time, I was more surprised about the fans' reactions because it doesn't seem like at least 50% of the fans doesn't know that the UFC has been at Yas Island before. Almost everybody I talked to just, are still in that Caribbean dream, it seems. So in somehow they didn't get a negative reaction from it. Which is of course good. So and they managed to create a lot of hype for that event. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, it absolutely did drum up the hype, and it is interesting to see the different ways people expected things to be, and then their reactions when they find out what they were. Now, you're going to be competing on Fight Island, but not against Chris Weidman. You're instead going to be fighting Kelvin Gastelum, currently ranked, I believe, 7th in the division, just fought 2 fights ago for the interim title against current champion Israel Adesanya. Can you talk a little bit about how the Gastelum fight came to be and the Weidman fight ended up not happening? Now he's fighting Omari Akhmedov.
Yeah, the thing was that I believe that, to be honest, I can't fully remember what happened with. I got some message that Weidman couldn't fight. I'm not sure what it was, if it was due to injury or something else. I don't know, but he was out of the question at the moment, at least when we discussed the fight, and then we were talking other options, and myself and my team, we pitched the Gastelum fight. We really wanted that to happen, and after some discussions with the UFC, they agreed to it, and I knew that Gastelum was up for the fight because he had mentioned it in the media. So yeah, we agreed to the fight, and so it happens.
Right, of course. And before we actually get to the fight, you have to get to Yas Island. What does your travel plan look like as we get closer to fight week?
We will travel next week on Wednesday. First, I will travel to London, and in London we're gonna be in quarantine. So we're gonna get COVID tested. Then we're gonna be in quarantine for 2 days in a hotel room, and then we're gonna get on a plane to Yas Island or to Abu Dhabi. So and I'm not sure what the procedure is when we get there, but yeah, I probably got that info somewhere. But yeah, that's all I know for now.
Right. And you mentioned you're going to be traveling in parts. You're going to be quarantining. There are going to be tests. The UFC released an infographic where they explained just how many tests and when the tests would be provided to fighters. Now, obviously, with COVID being such a present factor in everyone's lives, and with the inherent risk associated with competing during this time and traveling during this time, I take it that you're confident and comfortable with the UFC's measures, and you've liked what you've seen so far. You think they're doing enough?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's to be a part of this event is probably more safe than me going outside here. So it seems super safe. So I think they are doing a good job.
Absolutely. And of course, going back to that Kelvin Gastelum fight, you mentioned that you and your team asked for the Gastelum fight once the Weidman fight didn't come through. Assuming that you could have fought either, do you prefer the Gastelum fight to the Weidman fight?
Definitely. I prefer that fight, and I think I asked for it when they gave me the Weidman fight again as well. But I know, Gastelum had both yeah, he got popped for for weed, and he was suspended for some time, and then he had a knee injury, I believe. So he was off there and couldn't fight. But yeah, so yeah, the things turned out pretty good eventually. So now it's on.
Right. And just a quick tangent question. Do you have a problem with marijuana being tested for by USADA and being something that fighters can be suspended for? Do you think that should be allowed in and out of competition?
Yeah, both, because I can understand the in competition issue, because there are some crazy guys out there that probably will go in the cage high, so I can see that might be an issue. But other than that, I'm fine with it. I really doesn't think that there is any performance enhancing about it, so it should definitely be allowed.
Right, I agree. Someone going in there while high on marijuana might not be the best idea, but some of the properties for recovery are being discussed scientifically. So in
Yes.
that sense, I agree with you there. But again, going back to that Gastelum fight, you said that you did prefer it to the Weidman fight. What makes that fight so enticing for you? Is it, for example, the rankings where Gastelum is ranked 7th and Chris Weidman is currently not ranked? Is it something about the style matchup? What stands out about the Gastelum fight for you?
Yeah, definitely a fighter that's well established, and that people respect for his position right now. He maybe did the best fight against Adesanya that somebody has done so far. Yeah. So, and of course, as you mentioned, the rankings. If we lose to somebody that's outside of the rankings, then you might go out as well, and so there's a higher risk in that. So. Yeah, and more reward as well. If I beat Gastelum, he's ranked just behind me, then I can push for a fight in the top 5 after a eventual win.
Right, absolutely. And when you look at Gastelum, you mentioned his fight with Adesanya. How would you characterize his biggest strengths, and what, if any, weaknesses do you think there might be for you to exploit in the fight?
Um, his strength is his hands, his craftiness. He's smart. He's hard to get out of there. He's durable. So he has a lot of strength, and but his stand up is his biggest asset. He has a wrestling background and a black belt as well, but I still feel like I'm a little bit sharper in those areas. So I think I have a little bit more tools and more variety in my game, and that's what I'm looking forward to use to be a little bit more unpredictable. And it's going to be hard for him to know what's coming when he's fighting me.
Right. And you mentioned your ground game. Now, for a grappling fan like myself or someone who's been following your career, your ground game has been a major staple there. Obviously, you're striking consistently improving as well, but your ground game has really been your trademark. You pair very slick submissions, particularly your guillotine choke, which we've seen time and time again, with very ferocious ground and pound. And that gives you kind of, at least in my opinion, a really good dual threat where someone can't be under you, but they are forced to give up position, which allows you to work. As a martial artist and as someone who has those two skill sets that really complement one another, how do you see the fight as far as implementing both of those skills at the same time?
I feel like on any fighter, even if they are a great jiu-jitsu fighter or whoever, if I get on top, they will be in trouble, because you need to use your hands to frame and to defend the jiu-jitsu, and that will create openings for the punches. So it's just a storm coming to you if you're on the bottom of me, and slowly you will drown. And yeah, if you don't get on your feet very quickly, it's soon gonna be over. And I think that might be the case in this fight as well.
Right, absolutely. And of course, you mentioned at the beginning of the interview that some of your training patterns were disrupted by the pandemic. You had to train sometimes outside, I would imagine. The total number of training partners you could have was limited. Do you think any of these things affected your ability to train for this fight? Was there anything where you felt as though you weren't able to get 100% out of something?
Definitely, we haven't been able to work as much. Yeah, we didn't have a wall or cage available, or yeah, so there has been some restrictions. But on the other hand, then you work more on something else instead. So and maybe you're racing, those skills a couple of steps. So it's hard to know whether or not it has affected it positive or bad. But my feeling is that I'm very well prepared, and yeah, I feel like it has been a good camp.
Right, absolutely. And of course, even though training was a little bit different, one thing that'll also be different is your weight cut. I know you've typically been very professional with your weight. You very rarely have any kind of issues making weight. Do you think that the new situation where you have to travel and there's quarantine in the hotel, you might not be able to do some of the same things? Do you have any issues with your weight right now, or do you foresee that being smooth sailing?
Usually it's too easy for me to cut weight. It's really easy for me. I'm not a huge guy, but I can mention that I am a little bit heavier now than I've been before, and I don't think it's because of the quarantine. It's more that after my last fight, I had a good amount of time to focus on strength training and to put on some mass, and that mass are still staying there. So I will be a little bit heavier, not much, a little bit, but I know my body, and I'm 100% sure it's going to be no problem.
Right. And a bigger, scarier Jack Hermanson is a very terrifying prospect for the middleweight division. So very eager to see how you perform now that that strength and conditioning work and that mass has been adding, the work has been done, the mass has been adding. But you did mention that recent loss to Jared Cannonier, currently ranked third in the division. For a lot of fans who were watching your 4-fight winning streak, it seemed as though that streak might never end. But obviously, with the Cannonier fight, you did suffer a setback. Now, this isn't your first loss by any stretch of the imagination, but you've normally performed very well in your first fight back from a loss. I believe of your 2 UFC losses recently, both of the fights afterwards, you won by TKO. So clearly, suffering a setback is not going to put a damper on your mentality or your abilities. What goes through your mind after suffering a loss? How do you kind of adjust your routine and come back stronger than before?
First of all, I need to know why it happened. So I analyze the fight. And after I've done that, I want to find a solution for the problem that happened. So I analyze the fight. I find the solution. I go through that with that through my mind and process that. And then I feel like I'm done with it. Now I know what I did wrong. Now I know what I should have been doing. And I can put that aside. I'm a better fighter now. Let's move on and focus on the next task. You can't change what's in the past, but you can change the outcome of what will happen in the future. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Right, right. And of course, you mentioned rewatching those fights. So you're doing the tape study of your own fights to see what went right, what went wrong. Do you do a lot of tape study of your opponents before the fight?
A little bit, not too much, a little bit. You can take some from it, but at the same time, you gotta stay in the moment there and read what is happening. Sometimes I use my own mistakes as feints, or I know that people are gonna prepare. I watch my own tapes, see my mistake, and then I'm almost planning for my opponent's game plan. What is he gonna do against me? I would do this, and then I try to correct those things, or maybe even set traps when they're gonna attack those things. So yeah, I study a little bit, but I let my coaches do most of the studying.
So that's fascinating. So you'll go back and see a fight and see something where maybe you'll throw a feint, or you'll move in for a takedown that might not be properly set up, and you'll see that your opponent in that fight will accept that, adapt to it, and succeed in that moment. And you'll use that same error as a feint of sorts in your next fight.
Yeah, definitely, and especially in training and so on. And I also, of course, try to, if it's a big error, I try to fix that as well, of course. Not only use it as bait, but it does happen that that I use it as bait as well.
Well, that is just fascinating, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on that for sure. If I can find it, I'll make sure to send you a message and be like, all right, I'm on to you. I know what's going on.
That's good.
Right, absolutely. So now we've broken down the fight between you and Kelvin Gastelum. How do you see it going officially?
I believe it's gonna be, I'm always picturing myself a high pace, violent fight, long fight, 3 rounds. But at the same time, I'm also picturing myself creating those opportunities to finish the fight. But I would say it's gonna be a grueling fight, and after somewhere in the third round, I'm getting the finish.
Right, absolutely. And of course, if you were to get that finish and win against Gastelum, what would you say is next for Jack Hermanson? I mean, that division, that top five, and even that top 10, there's a lot going on. I mean, we assume that the title fight between Adesanya and Paulo Costa is going to happen. You've got Robert Whittaker, the #1 contender, the former champion. #2 is Costa. 3 is Cannonier. 4 is Yoel Romero. 5, Darren Till, yourself at 6, Gastelum at 7. What's next for Jack Hermanson in that crowded top 5?
I feel like it could be maybe a contender fight, the winner of Till and Whittaker, or maybe let's say that it would be a close title fight, a really close one. Then the loser from the title fight might be a good contender fight as well. So then you have 2 contenders, the winner of Till and Whittaker and but of course you can't forget Jared Cannonier is in the mix as well there. So he also needs to fight somebody and get his chance up there. So it's hard, but if I could prefer, the winner of Whittaker and Till would be perfect.
And what a fight that would be. I mean, either of those guys against Jack Hermanson, that's a great fight. So hopefully we get to see that down the line. Now, I would like to ask you about that title picture, because it is obviously what you're aiming for in the middleweight division. Starting with Israel Adesanya, the undefeated, undisputed current champion, did you expect him to beat Robert Whittaker in the manner that he did? And what did you take away from both fighters from that fight?
When it comes to fights, it's always, sometimes I predict because people want me to, but I know how hard it is to predict fights. I'm always getting wrong 50% of the time, and it was the same in that fight. I predicted Whittaker to have the edge in that fight, but it seems you can see that Adesanya got him there, and that's how it is in this game. It might have been looked different on another day, or it's just the styles. Really, really hard to say, but I think Whittaker was a great champ, and Adesanya is as well. Then he's gonna fight Paulo Costa, and I can see Paulo Costa making trouble for Adesanya as well. So it seems that I feel like everybody in the top there in middleweight division can beat each other.
Yeah, I would not envy the people who are doing their predictions as their job. I know I make predictions on the side, but hey, it doesn't matter if I get it wrong, you know? So for the record, if I was going to use your advice, I should be picking Paulo Costa over Israel Adesanya?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like he's going to come with such a pressure that it's going to be hard for Adesanya to use his finesse. He might catch Paulo Costa on the way in, but I feel like it might be too much for him, when he's coming there as a storm and with that powerful physique and pressure and power. It's going to be tough to deal with for anybody.
Absolutely. And Jack, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sticking with me as we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. Before I let you go and to do whatever it is that a quarantine fight camp looks like for you, do you have anyone that you'd like to thank, shout out? The floor is yours.
I'm always just thanking the fans. Thank you for rooting on me. And make sure that you tune in on July 18th and watch my fight against Kelvin Gastelum.
I know I will, and I know they will. Jack, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Take care.